Well, I'm going to try to entice people to listen to every one of the videos in this book that I have just finished reading. It is about the unseen world, the life that after we transit from this life that we go into. And it is a beautiful story. It is a true story, I believe. It is told by one who came back from living there and influenced someone to write his words about what it's like on the other side. And I'm just going to read a little tiny portion now, but you can hear the entire book. If you'll look over in the description bar, you will see my playlist for it, and it has all of the videos lined up like ducks. You just listen to one after the other all the way through. But just to entice you just a bit, I'm going to read a tiny bit in this video that I'm making right now, the one to entice you to read the entire thing. It is the habit of most men to look upon the spirit world and the earth world as two planes apart, separate and distinct. They regard the two worlds as being each independent of the other, cut off from each other, and both entirely uninformed or unaware of what the other is doing. That the spirit world could possibly have any influence upon the earth world to the latter's advantage is demonstrated to be altogether false by the state of universal disorder that exists through the entire earth world. There is another school of thought consisting of those who have made a superficial study of what they call occultism. These people believe that the earth world, being indisputably very earthly, and the spirit world being incontrovertibly very spiritual, the two worlds are for these reasons automatically inhibited from anything like intercommunication. Both these lines of thought are unquestionably wrong. The two worlds, yours and ours, are in constant and direct communication, and we are fully aware of what is occurring upon the earth plane at all times. I do not for 1 minute say that we, all of us, know what is taking place with you. Those of us who are in active communion with you are conversant with your personal affairs and with the affairs of your world in general, while the rest of us here, who have no further active interest, the earth plane since we left it, may be unaware of many things in connection with it. Those wise beings in the higher realms are in possession of all knowledge of what is transpiring upon earth. I would like to indicate one or two channels through which the influence of the spirit world is exerted upon the earth world. First, we might take that influence in a personal way. Every soul that has been and is to be born upon the earth plane has allocated to him or her a spirit guide. In past ages, some such idea must have filtered through into the minds of the early churchmen, since they adopted the pious notion of giving to every incarnate person an unseen protector, whom they called a guardian angel. These guardian angels sometimes found their way into contemporary art, where the artist drew a somewhat vapid individual, dressed in glistening white garments and supporting from his shoulders a pair of enormous wings. The whole conception would suggest by its very implications a remoteness of a great gulf between the guardian angel and the soul he was supposed to be guarding. He would, one might say, be unable to draw very near his charge because of extreme spiritual refinement upon the one hand and repelling earthly grossness upon the other. Let us turn from this inaccurate figment of the artist's brain to something a little more practical. Spirit guides constitute one of the grandest orders in the whole organization and administration of the spirit world. They inhabit a realm of their own, and they have all lived for many centuries in the spirit world. They are drawn from every nationality that exists upon the earth plane, and they function regardless of nationality. A great many of them are drawn from Eastern countries and from the North American Indians, too, because it has always been the case that dwellers in those regions of earth world were and are already possessed of psychic gifts themselves, and were therefore aware of the interrelationship of our two worlds. The principal guide is chosen for each individual on the earth plane in conformity with a fixed plan. Most guides are temperamentally similar to their charges in the latter's finer natures. But what is most important, the guides understand and are in sympathy with their charges' failings. Many of them, indeed, had the same failings when they were incarnate, and among other useful services, they try to help their charges overcome these failings and weaknesses. A great number of those who practice communication with the spirit world have already met their spirit guides and are in close touch with them. And fortunate indeed they are. The guides, too, are never happier than when they have established a direct link with those whose lives they are helping to direct. It would be safe to say that by far the greater number of spirit guides carry on their work all unknown to those whom they serve, and their task is so much the heavier and more difficult. But there are still others whose lives upon earth render it practically impossible for their guides to approach within any reasonable distance of them. It naturally saddens them to see the mistakes and follies into which their charges are plunging themselves, and to be obliged to stand aloof because of the thick wall of material impenetrability which they have built up around themselves. Such souls, when they at last arrive in the spirit world, awake to a full realization of what they have thus missed during their earth lives. In such cases, the guide's work will not be entirely in vain, for even in the worst souls there comes on occasion, however transient, when the conscience speaks, and it is usually the spirit guide who has implanted the better thought within the brain. It must never for one instant be thought that the influence of the spirit guide negatives or violates the possession or expression of free will. If upon the earth plane you were to observe somebody about to take a false step into a stream of traffic upon the road, the fact that you put out your hand to stop him would in no way impinge upon his exercise of free will. A spirit guide will try to give advice when his advice can be got through to his charge. He will try to lead him in the right direction solely for his own good, and it remains for his charge, in the exercise of his free will, to take that advice or reject it. If he does the latter, he can only blame himself if disaster or trouble overtakes him. At the same time, the spirit guides are not there to live a person's life for him. That he must do for himself. It has become a habit among a certain class of individuals of the earth plane to ridicule the whole establishment of spirit guides. There will assuredly come a time when they will bitterly repent their folly, and that day will be whereon they meet in the spirit world their own guide, who probably knows more about their lives than they do themselves. We in the spirit world can afford to pass by such ridicule as this, because we know that the day will inevitably come when they will arrive in the spirit world, and great is the remorse, and in many instances the self-pity of those who have, in their supposed wisdom, made fools of themselves. Apart from spirit guides, there is another prolific source of influence that derives from the world of spirit. I have told, for example, how earthly doctors' hands will be guided in performing an operation by the hand of a spirit doctor. In many walks of life, spirit inspiration is being carried on in the same way as it has been carried on since the dawn of time. Incarnate man can really do very little of himself. and he is the first to realize it when he comes here to live. Man can perform certain mechanical actions with precision and exactitude. He can paint a picture. He can play upon an instrument. He can manipulate machinery. But all the major discoveries that are of service to the earth plane have come, and always will come, from the spirit world. If man, employing his free will, chooses to put those discoveries to base ends, then he can thank himself for the calamities that follow. Inspiration devoted to whatever cause or pursuit comes from the world of spirit and from nowhere else. If it be for the good of mankind, the source is equally good. If the inspiration is obviously not for the good of mankind, then the source is unquestionably evil. Man has it within his own hands as to which source of inspiration he will lend himself, to good or to evil. You will remember how I have told you that a person is exactly the same spiritually the moment after he has died as he was the moment before. No instantaneous change takes place to turn an earthly lifetime of evil into good. One Orthodox church takes the view, which is also an infallible teaching, that those of us who return to the earth plane and make our presence known are all devils. It is a pity that the church is so blind, for it can be said that they are trying, ineffectually, to stifle the forces of good, while they are ignoring the real forces of evil. If they encouraged the forces of good to come to them, the forces of evil would soon be put to flight. The churches of whatever denomination suffer from abysmal ignorance. Throughout the ages right down to the present time, they have gone their own blind, ignorant way, disseminating fantastic teachings in place of the truth, and paving the way through the universal ignorance begotten of such false teachings for the forces of evil to operate. A minister of the church performs the services and offices prescribed by his particular sect, and he stifles all inspiration by holding to creeds and dogmas that are utterly false. If he were interrogated in the matter, he would reply that he believed in inspiration in a vague, remote way. In the long run, he would find it much less trouble to borrow the religious thoughts of some other incarnate person, and to rely upon his own cleverness, than to rely upon his own cleverness for any original thought. But to suggest that the spirit world has any influence upon the earth world other than evil would be totally against his principles. It is a strange habit of mine that persists in the belief that it is always the forces of evil from the spirit world that try to make their power felt upon the earth plane. The forces of evil are attributed with powers which, it would seem, are denied to the forces of good. Why? And why are the churches mortally afraid to try the spirits, as they are advised to do in the very book upon which they place so much reliance? They ignore this text and point to a warning finger to the supposed woman of Endor. The spirit world works constantly to make its power and force and presence felt by the whole earth world, not only in personal matters, but through individuals into a wider sphere for the good of nations and national policies. But so little can be done because the door is usually closed to the higher beings of the spirit world, whose range of vision and whose wisdom and knowledge and understanding are vast. Think of the evils that could be swept from the face of the earth under the immensity able guidance of wise teachers from the spirit world. The world of spirit does its best through the limited channels available, but it is safe to say that there is no problem upon the earth plane that could not be solved by the help and advice and experience of those beings I have just mentioned. But it would involve one thing, an implicit adherence to whatever they advised or advocated. Many a leader, either of the nation's affairs or of religious thought, who is here with us in the spirit world, is filled with sorrow when he looks back upon the wasted opportunities for bringing about a revolutionary change for the betterment of his fellow countrymen. He will confess that he had the ideal in his mind. He did not know then that it had been impinged thereupon by the spirit world, but he had allowed himself to be overruled. These souls sigh for the state into which humanity has degraded itself. Humanity has, in effect, allowed the evil forces to dictate to it. But the evil ones, so beloved by the churches, have appeared in a different direction from that which those same churches alleges that they come. The men and women who practice communication with us in all seriousness and earnestness, and who enjoy happy meetings with their spirit friends as well as with noble teachers from the higher spheres, are accused of dealing with devils. That is rubbish. The real devils are far too busy elsewhere, in places where they can produce far greater results to their own evil satisfaction. You will say that my outlook seems rather pessimistic. Really, after all, the earth world is not as bad as I paint it. That is perfectly true, because we have managed to get through to the earth world just one or two of our ideas and thoughts and precepts. But it can safely be said that in spite of universal earth world disorder, had we withdrawn every element of our influence, the earth world would, in a very brief time, be reduced to a state of complete and absolute barbarity and chaos. And the reason is that man thinks he can get along nicely by his own powers and volition. He is conceited enough to think that he requires no help from any source whatever. As for assistance from the spirit world, if such a place exists, it is unthinkable. If there is such a place as the spirit world, it is fully time enough to begin thinking it when one arrives there. For the present, then, they are so superior that they know everything and can manage their own affairs perfectly well without the help of a shadowy spirit world. And when many men arrive here in the same world of spirit that they scorned, they see their own littleness and the littleness of the world they have just left. But small though the earth world may be, man still needs help in conducting its affairs, and that is another discovery that he makes when he comes here. The earth world is beautiful, and life upon it could be beautiful as well, but man steps in and prevents it. The spirit world is surpassingly beautiful, more beautiful than the mind of man incarnate can possibly imagine. I have tried to show you a glimpse or two of it, but your world looks very dark to us, and we try very hard to bring a little light to it. We try to make our presence known, our influence felt. Our influence is great, but it has yet to be increased far, far beyond its present range. When we in our world gain full acceptance, you will then know what it means to live upon the earth plane. But we have a long way to go yet. And I just want to end this with these words. Please go to the description bar, and there you will see the playlist for this entire book. I found this book online. Someone had commented under a video and talked about this book, how you could Google it and go right to it, The Unseen Moral, and that's what I did, and I found it, and I am so glad I did, and that I learned of it, because I love to read really good books, and I always feel when I read a book, usually I always feel that this is one that needs to be heard, and that's what I think about this one, and so I hope that you will listen to it. I made it as easy as possible. You don't even have to read. Just turn on the playlist and go about your busy workaday world. Listen to me in the background telling you about this world through this man who has been there and lived there and is talking about it in these pages. And I wish you much love, and I send you light and love. This is the Dove Lady, over and out.